What's going on, Sports Nation? I'm your host, Kenneth Tiberius Clark, and you guys are listening to another fun episode of the Sports Exclusive podcast. Now, today, we're going to go back into the vault that is referred to as the Breakroom Breakdown. And, this is going to be volume 2. Just pulling out another episode, another interview that I enjoyed and that I think translates well into the Sports Exclusive podcast. Now, for this specific one, I took an impromptu trip to Chicago one time. I met with one of my old Navy buddies and hung out, went to Wrigleyville, the whole nine, right? Even went to a Blackhawks game, which was fun. Through my adventures there, I was able to get linked up with an individual named Corey Jahner, and he is a semi-professional rugby player over there. Obviously it's Chicago, it's the Midwest, it's rough, it's tough, it's that blue collar mindset. So, me not knowing much about the sport, really wanted to have this guy come on and just give a very in-depth breakdown of just rugby as a whole, the positions, the rules, everything. And it wanted to be in a very, once again, a very fun and very insightful interview. So stay tuned. You guys are going to get a flashback to the Breakroom Breakdown, Volume 2, a different kind of football with Corey Jahner. Stay tuned. Corey, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. How are you doing?
I am doing great, right? Ready to learn about a sport that I haven't, I've always seen. I've seen on movies and stuff like that. All I know about rugby is that the ball is bigger, and you guys hit each other with no pads.
That's a good start, actually.
which is scary to me. I'm a football player, so I'm used to protection. Sure. So I want to know your rugby background. How did you get into the sport? How did you get to where you're at now?
Sure. I actually only started playing after college. My brother did play in high school and college. He played at Southern Cal. So we went to high school overseas. We were in Singapore, and so our high school just had it as a school sport. It was still at that time pretty uncommon in the U.S. as a high school sport, but he got into it over there. I never did because it was the same day as football, and you had to practice 2 sports in one day, and I was lazy. So he wasn't. He was a workhorse, so he went ahead and did both. And then after college, he and I ended up just by chance living in Raleigh together. He had already been there for a bit and had already plugged into the local club there, the Raleigh Vipers. Mm-hmm. And basically the day I moved in, he said, "By the way, you play rugby now." I said, "Oh, all right, that sounds good."
Like he didn't ask you; he told you. He said, "We're doing this thing."
He knew me well enough that he knew he wouldn't get much pushback on it, but it was very much a statement instead of a question. But he took me out to one practice, and just beat the hell out of each other and ran around and got a great run in and met a great group of guys, and was absolutely hooked from just day one. It was like January, back in like 2009. In January in Raleigh, and I remember it was like flurries outside, and I was the very first part of it just like I don't want to be here. It's cold and miserable. And then we started running around, started getting in the game a little bit, and
heating up.
It was over.
The rest was history. So Corey, would you say so? You actually have an extensive football background. So you play football.
I played high school football.
Okay.
College, I played club baseball. I was more in kind of party mode than anything physical. But one of the reasons I got back out into it was because I did miss the physicality and smashing into people. So.
Oh wow! Okay.
Got back into it without much resistance from the big brother. So we played together on that team until we actually both ended up moving to Chicago at the same time.
Okay.
And joined the same club here as well, a club called Lincoln Park Rugby, and that's who I've been playing with since fall 2010. So as the club goes, I am ancient, but still going strong till the wheels fall off, as I tell everyone that asks me when I'm stopping.
So that means now you would have been. I mean, it's been more than 10 years now.
Yep.
So it's been a good while. So the biggest thing for obviously us, we're new to rugby. We don't know much about it.
Sure.
I'm a football guy. You want to teach me rugby? All right. What are the basics of
Very
rugby?
basics.
What do I need to know? I'm just starting right now. You're trying to get me into rugby. What are you telling me?
Well, I'll tell you, it's great for anybody that likes the physicality of football, but doesn't like how often they stop.
Okay.
So, I mean, football evolved from rugby, so
Mm-hmm.
it's similar scoring. It's still full contact. There's just no forward passes. There's no blocking, and play doesn't stop when you get tackled. It keeps going. What's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen when you get tackled is what's going to form over the two things have to happen as soon as a guy gets tackled, right?
Mm-hmm.
The tackler has to release the ball carrier. The ball carrier has basically one movement to place the ball in a way that his team can get to it. Because what's going to happen after that is other people from both sides are going to meet over the top of that and try to fight for the ball. And that's what's called a ruck.
Okay.
And once a ruck's formed, you can't stick your hands in there unless it's at the back and you're pulling it out to play it. But if you're a part of the ruck, you can't use your hands. So you'll see guys just kind of fighting over and trying to work the ball back with their feet. And then it exits the ruck and play just continues. So
Now, how many men are on the field per team?
15. 15.
15.
And the main format that I play is called Rugby Union. There's a couple others that are a little bit different. Rugby League, I think, is 13,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a bunch of rules that I'm not well versed in enough to really describe. There's no rucks. It's basically just you get back up and put it between your legs and keep going. Union is a little more of a grinder. Of a game, and then there's sevens as well, which just got back into the Olympics. Which I think, if you've seen rugby on TV in the U.S., that's probably the format you've seen because they televise that. It's that one's 7-a-side and 7-minute halves, so it's a lot more conducive to like a tournament format where you can play a bunch of games in one day, one weekend, so you can get a whole tournament in. Over the course of a long weekend, and it sounded like a complete waste of time when I first heard about it. 7-minute halves, like what's the point of that? And you go through one half. It's the same size field, but less than half the people, so you have so much more space. It's basically a 7-minute dead sprint where you
Jesus
also
Christ.
have collisions, and it takes it out of you. But you recover for a little bit. You can play another game, but that was an extremely long-winded way to say that the sport that I play is 15-a-side.
So well, no. And I'm glad you touched on that because I was going to ask on it. I was going to ask about it. How do you prepare yourself to play to play nonstop for 7 minutes?
That's just extensive training. It's a different kind of training. And union like 15s, that's a different kind of fitness as well. It's really they're both really specialized.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not training for one or the other, it's going to take it out of you. It's a lot of sprints for sevens, but for 15s, it's more high intensity interval type stuff, like kind of 20 on, 30 off kind of thing. Because there are times you can kind of regroup because there's stoppages, there's this and that. You're not always going full tilt, or at least not as much as you are in sevens.
So when you're not in season, or do you keep like a regular cardio regimen just to kind of?
I try to. I try to work. Well, that wasn't always the case. I kind of got by on just being a fairly decent natural athlete, and then I had body parts starting to fall off, and decided it might help if I wandered into a weight room every once in a while. You can only separate your shoulders so many times before you realize you should probably do something to prevent it. So
right.
I work in weight training and use some kind of like spin interval class or like some other kind of cardio. I've never been much of just a runner. I don't like running unless I'm chasing or being chased. So,
so okay. So then let me ask you this: you talked about having your shoulder separated a few
yeah.
times. What is the recovery process like? How do you manage your body to take on the rigors of rugby? Because I mean, we see on TV or we see clips of these guys hitting each other, and
Mm.
we don't know. To maybe you can tell us the extent of the injuries that you guys sustained.
I have quite a laundry list of my own.
Hmm.
Working from the bottom up, I'll probably skip over a couple, but a couple ankle sprains, both high and low. Torn MCL, broken a couple ribs, broken a few fingers. Um, what else? What else? What else? Separated this shoulder at least 3 times, which is different from dislocating, which I only learned when I did it. It's the joint between your collarbone and your shoulder blade that I have a fairly significant. Well, it's still like a little bit kind of wonky. If I push down on my collarbone, you can see the joint move, which isn't supposed to happen. But they said
Jeez.
as long as you get strength and range of motion back, it's not a problem. And then I like a couple of times got stitches in my face, and then a couple broken noses. I'm sure you can tell. And then and I broke my jaw once. That's kind of the coup de grace of my injury list.
Obviously, some of these injuries, all of them are bad, but some are worse than others. Did you continue playing through these things and realize later?
Some of them, some of them,
Some of them.
the broken jaw was pretty immediate that I came out.
Okay. Okay. I was about to say
um,
that.
some of the ankle stuff, you just kind of tape it up and stick it out.
Mhm.
A separated shoulder, if it's a really minor one, you can get by. Kind of sucks, but
Yeah.
you can power through as soon as you get kind of range of motion and strength back. This is not medical advice. My doctors would tell me I'm an idiot for thinking like this, but they kind of get it. Because
Guys,
I've been to orthopedic specialists before that have like I know you rugby people are insane and you're gonna disregard what I say anyway. So here's how you can do it without being a complete moron and hurting yourself way worse. So I try to not be too dumb about it. I'm uh, hitting an age where stuff hurts more when I'm
mhm.
not injured. So
And it takes longer to heal up.
and it takes longer to feel normal again after a full hit up. The injury depends on the person.
So I will ask you this, and this is I don't know if this is an urban legend, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Do you guys really like drink beer during the games? That's what I heard. It's like rugby guys, they drink beer during the games, and that's what I hear.
So like during, not so much like the level that most men's clubs don't. I didn't play in college, but a lot of the kind of stories you hear are born of college age stuff. And I don't think it's as prevalent as it has been before. I think the college level has started to kind of elevate as the sport gains popularity.
Mhm.
Um, but there's certainly some shenanigans, and there's some social tournaments where you'll have guys cracking beers between games. Um,
Mhm.
but I can't do it anymore. I
Mhm.
never really did. I think there was one game where my match was finished, and then we had an old boys game afterwards where all the older guys that have kind of aged out of the club will all get together and they'll play kind of like a lower intensity,
Mhm.
just kind of friendly against the old boys from the other team that we were playing.
Mhm.
Those are always fun events, fun to watch. You get some older guys out to watch the newer guys. And I was already a few beers deep on the sideline. They needed bodies, so they tapped me to go in for that. And I was like,
It was it was no bueno.
it wasn't my favorite. No, like I said, like I'm lucky it was an old boys game because they don't go like as kind of balls out and try to behead each other as much because I mean they've all aged out of playing like the kind of club level that I'm at now. So they, it's more about just getting out and staying connected to the sport and getting a run in with your old boys. But
No.
it's still, even that was it was ill advised. I can't even do it hungover anymore, much less still hammered.
So you mentioned going balls out.
Yeah.
Does it, because once again, I just came back from Chicago. I watched the hockey game, and as we know, in hockey, they fight. Does that happen often in rugby? Guys get into actual fisticuffs, fist fights? Or is
Not
it
as
just
much, not as much as you think. Certainly there's some aggression.
few elbows?
It's more common for guys to just do kind of like dirty stuff
Okay.
within the kind of confines of the game. So, I mean, if you're, for example, I mentioned when you tackle a guy, you got to roll away or move away from the ball carrier. If you don't do that quick enough, you'll have a guy probably stepping on your back and giving you doing what they call giving you stripes.
They call it
Kind of
stripes.
a little bit of a rake down the back with the bottom of their boots, and it'll give you a nice little lines up your side, nice little lengthy bruises to match the spikes you got raked with. Just stuff like that. It's very self-policing because there's so many instances where you're vulnerable to take a cheap shot that nobody really wants to start off that way. It's kind of a mutually assured destruction kind of thing. Just it's gonna get out of hand. And the other thing is that it's not really tolerated. Like if referees see it, you're gonna get sent off. So at the very least, that you don't want to leave your team shorthanded. And on the other side, you don't want to do something stupid that makes the other guy mad enough to retaliate to you or one of your teammates. So very few actual where guys are like swinging at each other. It happen, but it's a lot less common than it would be in hockey.
Right. Well, and plus, then it's so physical. It's almost like, well, how much more physical can we get? What else can we do?
And I've had guys that I wanted to make sure they knew I was there. So, but there's enough opportunities to hit a guy clean and then just kind of give him a little pat on the back on the way up when you're running to the next breakdown or whatever. There's plenty of opportunities to make a guy regret saying or doing something stupid.
Is that a lot of trash talking?
There's a fair amount. It's really kind of team dependent. We've tried to kind of crack down on it because if you start kind of chirping at the other team, and that can flow into chirping at the ref, and it's not going to help you. So
you want the refs to like you, right? Or
yeah. There's a lot of subjectivity in a lot of their decisions, so you don't want to have them immediately go the other guy's way because you were running your mouth. So I have not always been the best about that myself, but I've calmed down of late. Because it turns out that no matter how much you yell at the ref, they never change their calls. So just deal with it.
Oh, so it's like that. It's like that rugby too. Oh, okay, just making sure.
Oh yeah, sure is. They're unconvinced.
Right.
There's even more kind of decorum surrounding referees in rugby. I mean, you refer to the referee as sir. That's just kind of what you do.
Okay.
And there's very little tolerance for anyone. Kind of, if you're not the captain, you shouldn't be speaking to the referee at all.
Wow. Okay.
So it's very. There's a lot of kind of protocol that goes along with that as well. So you don't have 15 guys on each side because there's only one referee running everything. So at higher levels, you'll have line judges that are on the sidelines that are also technically referees, but for the most part, even at the highest level, there's one guy regulating everything.
So it's more of an umpire.
Yeah.
As opposed to so it's more like okay. As opposed to just like in football, multiple referees and
Lord help us. One guy calling the shots, and he can ask they'll call them ARs if they're actually assistant referees. that are line judges. Honestly, in our games, most of the time it's just somebody on the line that somebody on one of each team will be on the sidelines, just putting a flag up whenever someone goes out of bounds. But at the higher levels, they'll actually have assistant referees, which is very, very useful. But especially with seeing things that happen behind the play, because there shouldn't be much happening away from the ball.
So I'll ask you this. Earlier you mentioned only the captain talking to the referee, all right, which is different because in other sports the whole team talks trash to the referees. In rugby, how are the positions set up?
You have two basic groups of positions. You have forwards and you have backs. Forwards tend to be a little bigger. They tend to be involved in a lot more of the kind of dirty work. They're more involved in rucks. They're more involved in they're the ones running the scrums and lineouts and mauls and things of that nature that I can explain what they are later. Larger, typically not as quick, but I mean everybody on the field needs to have the ability to carry, the ability to pass, tackle. There's kind of like a basic set of skills that everyone on the field needs to be at least okay at, and then the backs are going to be more quick, more often than not. Yeah, they'll have a little bit better ball skills. They'll be quicker, that sort of thing. There's a connection between the two. There's a scrum half that's more often than not when I mentioned there's a ruck after there's a tackle has been made. He's usually the guy that picks it up and gives it either to the backs or to a pot of forwards that's set up to probably run just kind of a strike run and just kind of bash it forward.
In basketball, you have a point guard, and
right.
And football, you have a quarterback. Who would that person be for rugby? Is it more of a shared responsibility as far as directing and play calling?
So that would be probably the closest analogy. That would be the fly half. So that's going to be the number 10. So all the positions are numbered. If you're watching a game, the number on the guy's back is going to correspond to his position. That kind of helps if you're trying to track how the game works and who's going where and who is supposed to be in what spot. 1 through 8 is going to be your forwards. That's 2 props. 1 and 3 are props. Those are typically kind of the thickest fellows on the field. You have a hooker in between them at number 2. The hooker gets his name from what he's doing in the scrums. So the 1 through 3 is it's not as fun as it sounds. So when the scrum happens, I'm sure you've seen a scrum, but it's when both teams get together. You got 3 guys in the front. It's just kind of a wad of humanity that gets real low, and they smash together with their heads interlocked.
And they're pushing.
And they're pushing against each other, and that's a way to restart after an unintentional knock on where you drop the ball and ball goes forward, or a forward pass. And the front row is 1 through 3, and those are the 3 guys that are making contact with the other team, engaging in what we refer to as the dark arts, because very few people actually understand what actually happens in there.
The dark arts.
The dark arts. The front row is a scary place.
Oh, wow.
I've never been there, and I'm not in a hurry to. But there's just so much you can do kind of with body position and different, angles and even ways you can coordinate with the hooker and the other prop to control the guy across from you and gain an advantage in the scrum. There's more about that than I could possibly relay or even learn. It's a fascinating position just because there's so much to it it's really hard to see, even to someone like me who's been playing the game for 13 years. Then behind the front row you've got locks, so those 4 and 5. They each have their head in between basically the butt of the hooker and a prop, and they're bound to each other. So that's also known as your second row. And you have flankers on either side of them on the outsides. And what they call number 8 at the back, who's between the locks in the same way that the locks are kind of pushing against the front row. And number 8 is where I live. That's I usually play. And that's a fun one because in the scrum, if the ball comes back our way, I have to control it at the back with my feet. And I can, depending on what we've called before the scrum, I can either kind of let the scrum half get it and send it out to the backs, or I just pick it up and take off myself.
Oh,
and
okay.
Those are some of my most fun plays. When I
So
get
you
to just...
so you get to make an executive decision.
No, unfortunately, no. I wish we
No?
did. Usually the 9 and 10 are making a call,
Okay.
and I have to abide that, which is often frustrating. If I would prefer to just pick it up myself,
Uh-huh.
but and then you get into the backs, 9 to 10. The 9 to 10 battery is kind of what you would see as the point guards, kind of the field generals, if you will. Probably 10 more so. The fly half is really kind of who the offense runs through quite often. And then you have 2 centers outside of him, and then a wing on each side and a fullback. So there's a lot of different positions.
Yeah, it's a lot of different positions, and I'm sure that differs based off of maybe what type of offense you run or what type of formations you use. Like, are there a lot of different formations in rugby?
No, those are the positions for everybody. When you get into kind of open play, it's less important kind of what order you're in. It's very free flowing.
Okay.
You can have kind of a game plan. You can have, if you have a scrum or a line out or some kind of a restart, you'll often have actual kind of plays where, this guy's going to run this line or this guy's going to go over him and then the ball's going to go here. And you can kind of plan out a couple of phases. And by phases, I mean, so when a guy gets tackled and the ball goes out again, that's a phase. So
okay,
you want to be able to put together multiple phases in a row. That's kind of a good sign your offense is clicking if you're retaining ball and setting up a bunch of phases. But other than that, you kind of have to see things kind of flow, see what's in front of you, and play off of what the defense is giving you, because the way that the defense has to realign, they have to be behind a certain line where basically they have to be behind where the tackled ball carrier is. So every time somebody gets tackled, they have to back up to that line. Because every time a tackle happens, it resets the offsides line, and you can't come up from that until the ball is out. So,
so what I'm listening to is, I mean, obviously rugby has its own unique rules. Would you say that it kind of has, it holds, even though we talk about football, it holds some similarities to soccer a little bit? Maybe just a little bit? Would some, yeah.
There's a lot more kicking involved than there is in football. So as long as you're behind the kicker and you're on offense, you can go up and recover a kicked ball without the other team touching it. That's often something you strategically do. If you see, you've got a wing way over there in the corner that nobody's covering, you can just kind of boot it across the field and he may get to it before the other team. Or you can just kick and it's more of a punt. So where you're giving up possession, but you need to gain some territory. Maybe you're backed up in your own try zone, and you need to create some relief. So even that kind of goes back to football. It's not too many similarities with soccer, except for basically the size of the field. That's fairly similar.
Because when you said flanker, I've only heard flanker. I've heard flanker in soccer. Because I trained for my sister's soccer team, and it was like, oh, flanker. I'm like, what the hell is a flanker? So, yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's all I know. But okay. Now I will ask you this. This was my biggest. You told me about stripes, and if you want to get back at a guy and you give him, you step on his back or something. I don't know. What type of cleats do you wear? Do you wear soccer cleats or football cleats?
If you can't use football cleats because they have a toe spike.
Okay.
You can't have one that's like directly on the front. So there's rugby boots you can buy. Some backs wear soccer cleats because they just find them more comfortable. It's kind of a point of preference. And then a lot of guys will have both firm ground and hard ground spikes. So if you're on a firmer field, you'd probably have something that's molded. If you're in the backs, especially, props are probably going to have at least like 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch studs. Typically metal. The ones I use for pretty much all fields are kind of a hybrid. Like part of them are molded and they've got kind of metal tips on the studs, and the studs aren't huge. It's the tight, what they call the tight 5, the second row, the first and second rows. So jersey numbers 1 through 5. They typically will have studs no matter what, mostly because of the scrums. Everybody else, it's really kind of a point of preference. Whatever works for you.
First of all, rugby is a growing sport in America, right? So it's just starting to kind of get its shine in America. Based off of your knowledge in the 10, or you said 13 years that you've been playing rugby, if we're looking at, the entire world, what are the main rugby hubs? Where are the places to go around the world to play rugby at?
One of the first places people would think is New Zealand.
Okay.
They have one of the best national teams out there. Recently, the rest of the world's catching up a little bit. I don't know if it's them falling off, everyone else improving, or some combination. But the top 4 in the country right now, as world rankings go, actually South Africa is number 1 in the world
Really?
at the moment. I believe France just moved up to number 2 because they won the Six Nations just now this past weekend. And then you have New Zealand and Ireland, I believe, round out the top 4. And really, the 4 of them, any given week, anybody can beat anybody. It's just depends on the day. They're all, yeah. England is there, right up there too. The rest of the teams involved in Six Nations are all very strong. Which would be Wales and Scotland. The Six Nations, the tournament that just finished up this past weekend, and it happens every year with Ireland, England, Wales, Scotland, Italy, and France.
So it comes on every year in March?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know
Yeah.
Six Nations.
It was on Peacock this year, actually, which was nice. So you could actually stream all the games live.
And how many rounds is it? Is it about 4 or 5 rounds, somewhere up in there?
They each play each other once. So you play each team. So it'll be five games over the course of I think 10 weeks. There's usually a week in between. But it's a lot of fun. It's a very fun tournament to watch.
So is it the best?
Really high level.
So is it the best record? Whoever has the best record ultimately is the winner.
It's based on points. So you get points for a win. You get points for scoring 4 tries, and I think you can get kind of a bonus point for a close loss. I think if you can salvage a point if you're like within a try or something like that, and then it's based on the point total. So. So France won it this year.
They edged everybody out. Okay, France. So is America just? I mean, obviously still growing, but we would.
We're not very good. We're not great at 15s. We have a pretty good sevens program. I think we're top 10 in the world in sevens still. But yeah, rugby we're still working on.
Still a work in progress.
15s is still a work in progress. That's something that's got to be kind of built from the ground up. And it's moving in the right direction. There's a professional league in the U.S. now that's gaining traction. They've attempted that at least 3 other times in my recent memory, and they've all crashed and burned. But this one's actually got some staying power. The MLR. That's been going well. They're looking at expand. They just expanded as well.
So more teams.
More team. Yeah, they just added a team in Austin. The other big thing of it is youth development. You have to have people that grew up with the game and are taught high level rugby at a young age. Like that's why no one else plays football as early and often as we do, and it shows in what percentage of good football players are American, because we're born with it and we grow up with it.
Yeah,
it's like you go to your Ireland, South Africa, New Zealand, they're growing up with rugby, so they're already worlds in front of guys that are picking it up, even in like high school or college, so the youth development's huge.
Have they developed a draft system? I mean, obviously you're talking about youth development, but do they draft guys from college? Is that is this league doing that yet?
I believe they are, and they I think all of them also have kind of what they call academies. So they'll be kind of like development squads for each team,
like a farm system,
something like that. Yeah, and they'll I think they all just kind of live there, in or around kind of the city where the academy is, and it'll be a pretty intensive program to develop the next wave for that team. So it's moving in the right direction. I think it's still going to take a while for us to be, and truthfully, in my lifetime, I don't know we'll ever be kind of at the level of an Ireland or New Zealand or an Australia or South Africa. Or we can certainly make some progress.
Obviously, I asked about the different countries. Let's say if we're looking at America, right? What are the best rugby states?
Pretty big on each coast. Probably bigger on the West Coast.
Really?
Yeah. So back in the day, the University of California was the only college in the country that had a scholarship program for rugby. I don't think that's the case anymore, but they were kind of the first. They just had like a bunch of old money that dumped money into the program, and they were able to offer scholarships for rugby. There's still a very, very strong college program. There's a lot in California. Believe it or not, there's a lot in Utah. One of the MLR teams is there, and then there's a fair amount as well in the Northeast as well. There's a few teams in Texas. There's no professional team in Chicago, but there's a whole bunch of
small clubs,
men's clubs at various levels. It's kind of growing everywhere, but it's big on the West Coast. It's big in the Midwest.
Wow,
that's basically everywhere that's populated. I mean,
no, that's interesting, because I guess I always took it for more of a, I watched like one of my favorite movies, The Departed. They're in Boston. They're playing rugby and stuff. So that's what I always thought. It was Midwest, East Coast. That's what I always took rugby from. I guess now I can ask you this.
Sure.
More physical, rugby or football?
There's no easy answer to that, honestly. It's a different kind of physicality.
Okay.
Football, I mean, you got all that pads, which is ostensibly protection, but it's also quite often used as a weapon.
I'm glad you said it.
You don't have that. Yeah, you play football,
Yeah.
Hat on a hat, right?
Oh yeah.
But you don't have that option really. So you see fewer kind of full speed, violent collisions. And what you also don't see very often is getting hit from somewhere you don't see coming.
Okay.
You don't get hit away from the ball. There's instances where you're involved in contact, but it's in a way that's focused enough that you can kind of prepare yourself for it. But there's also the element of there's no pads, and yes, sometimes there are those kind of huge collisions. And even if there aren't, it's 80 minutes of just, very few stoppages smashing into each other for a long time. And it's a lot more, I'd say it's a lot more of a grind. You wake up the next morning and feel like you got hit by a bus. But there may be kind of fewer like normal shots that you took. It'll just be just constant, just
so, So if I was to define it this way, they're both physical, but you would say rugby is more of both violent, but rugby is more of a controlled violence. I know what you said. No,
it's a little bit more controlled.
Yeah.
Because it has to be for the sake of self-preservation, just so that everybody survives the game. But there's still some pretty shockingly violent collisions in rugby even. But you know how football is. You got receivers coming across, and then they're not looking, and this guy just takes his head off. Like luckily we don't see that because without pads that'd be
That'd be nasty.
That'd be brutal.
Yeah, I've seen some guys get blindsided pretty bad. So,
yeah.
Kind of wrapping up, I have two major questions for you.
Okay.
Well, let's start with one. How have you seen rugby evolve in the 13 years that you've been playing it? Like new things introduced, new playing styles. Has the game evolved since you've been playing it?
They're always kind of tweaking things. I think it has evolved. It's evolved since its inception. I mean, the reason they call it a try, which is the main way to kind of score. So what happens when you score a try, you have to put the ball down when you get into the end zone. It's called the try zone in rugby, but you cross the try line, get into the try zone, and you have to put downward pressure on the ball. When you do that, you come straight out from where it is to kick what they call conversion. And the try is worth 5, conversion's worth 2, so it's not unlike kind of a touchdown extra point situation. Like I said, you have to come straight out from where it was. So if you score over in the corner and you're right up against the sideline, you can come out as far as you want, but you have to be on that line, on a line parallel with the sideline, and place the ball there to kick. So that's why you'll see guys, when they get into the try zone, they'll run to the center and they'll put it down between the posts so that then you can get an easy kick. You just come straight out from right under the post, and it's a short kick to a good angle. The reason they call it a try is because the try itself used to not be worth any points. You used to just be able to try to kick the conversion.
But now
now they've been changing since it was born in football, or soccer rather, not what the world calls football. It came out of soccer, so the kicking was the key. Since then, they've kind of made progressions to kind of encourage more try scoring because it's more exciting to watch. So they've made a couple rule changes. Like the point system kind of evolved from, I think, tries were 3, and then they were 4, and now they're 5, and they put in another rule called the 50-22 rule. So there's 3. There's on the field, you got the 50 is midway, is the halfway line, and then on either side you have the 22-meter line, which is 22 meters away from each try zone. When I started playing, no matter where you were, if you kick the ball and it goes out of bounds, the other team gets to restart. They get the line out. This rule, and I gotta remember off the top of my head, because it's brand new, I think, this past fall season. If you kick from behind your own 50, or in your own territory, from behind the 50, and it hits the ground in bounds first and then goes out inside the 22, you get the line out.
Oh, okay.
So what that does is it makes the defending team drop an extra guy back to make sure that kick's not left open, and it opens more space to run with, in the line. Because when you're playing defense, you end up almost everybody's going to be in one flat line on that offsides line, and then ideally what happens is they come up together flat so they don't create any gaps in that wall that you're advancing forward. So it's hard to break through, and they can't gain any meters. When you remove a guy from that line, it obviously makes it easier to find holes in it. So that's one way they've done it. They've done a lot. That's one way they've tried to open things up to incentivize try scoring. they've also made a lot of changes to the scrums, because they used to be, you can go to YouTube and just kind of Google like scrums from like the 70s and 80s.
Were they terrible back then?
Oh, they're chaotic. Like they're just like running start, just bashing into each other. Now, you get set. There's not supposed to be too much space in between your shoulders. You want it to be stable, because there's a lot of risk of neck and back injuries for especially the front row guys if it's not under control. And they've done a lot to try to make it, safe to the extent that it can be. So those are the biggest kind of areas. Like they want to see more tries because gets more eyeballs on the sport, and they want to make the scrums a little bit less chaotic and unsafe, which I think is probably good. You'll get your purists every once in a while. They're like, it's like making it a wuss sport and all that. Settle down. It's still plenty violent.
Which happens, I think, in every sport. Because I mean, once again, rugby is I've had some great interviews on the show. Last time hockey, we had a lacrosse guy. There are sports that are trying to make themselves more attractive to the masses. Mm-hmm. So of course they're going to change and tweak all kind of stuff, and sure. the old heads are going to hate it. But the young whippersnappers are going to love it. They're all for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So my next question: is there a rugby player? I know you mentioned these different countries. Is there a certain player that you look at that you're like, this guy's pretty cool? Like, I'll kind of maybe take some things from his game. Do you have a favorite rugby player or somebody you're just really familiar with?
I don't have one favorite. I have a favorite style of player. Okay. Typically guys that run the ball violently. That's something I emulate my game after. So one of the first guys I remember kind of stumbling upon on YouTube when I was first learning the game and kind of familiarizing myself with the, how it even works. I'd see highlight reels of different players, and one of them that I kind of gravitated towards was a dude from France named Sebastien Chabal. And his nickname was the Caveman, for obvious reasons. If you see the man, just huge beard, just huge flow, and ran like he was trying to put you in the ground. So he was a lot of fun to watch. He played I think second row and 8. So
same as you, right?
my position as well. Probably the most famous rugby player ever is another guy that just his highlight reels are just otherworldly. A dude by the name of Jonah Lomu, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he kind of revolutionized the game. He was a wing for New Zealand. And wings are typically smaller guys. They're typically some of the fastest on the field, which
athletic,
very athletic. They're very, very quick. This dude was like 6'5", and just an absolute unit.
6'5"?
Yeah, he was a big dude, and ran through people as well as he could run around them. The way he like bumped people off, that's what they basically call, running someone over.
Sheesh.
He had a strong fend or stiff arm. It just was an absolutely iconic player for New Zealand forever. He was actually the face of one of the first rugby video games that was made, Jonah Lomu Rugby Challenge. I'll never forget playing that when I was a kid. That was probably my first exposure to the game, but I didn't get it, and I kind of got bored with it and stopped until later. But he was an absolute monster. And then there's a guy who plays for Scotland, and Hamish Watson, who just set a record for most international tackles made without missing one.
Most international.
Yeah. So he's playing the Six Nations. This goes back to the 2019 Six Nations. where he made something like 165 tackles without missing one. And he's a flanker. He's an open side flanker, which is supposed to be a real high motor guy, always expected to be making a lot of tackles. To be in that kind of a position where you're just a workhorse and all over the field and hitting everything that moves to make that many tackles without missing one is astounding.
Man.
So that's the kind of, you see, I saw the number and I was just, my jaw dropped. You're kidding me, man. He hasn't missed one. I'm good for missing one a game. Like, this guy's out of his mind.
So he played entire tournament, no misses.
And then another one, and then another one. This is over the span of several international tournaments. Yeah.
Oh, wow. You have me thinking this is one tournament.
No.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
This is over the span of 3+ years that he basically hasn't missed a tackle in an international game in like 3+ years, which is insane.
Wow. So are there no notable Americans yet?
I have some favorites of my own, just for for similar reasons, just because I like the way they play, or I've run into them personally and I root for them.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked watching Danny Barrett play sevens.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, sevens is the much more spread out version, but he was the guy that was out there running people over in sevens. He got signed just recently, I think, with the Houston Sabercats for the MLR this year. I think he's still in the sevens kind of pool, but he's going to play with them and also for Houston. I'm not 100% sure about that, but
is he 8?
I'm not sure what he is in 15s. I think so. He's either that or a flanker. He's a back row for sure. Back row being either flanker or an 8. And then who else was there on the U.S.? Carlin Isles was a lot of fun to watch because he was him and Perry Baker both. They also played sevens. Carlin Isles was, I want to say, very nearly an Olympic sprinter. So he's just stupid fast. And he also picked up the game super late in life. I think one of the first times I ever saw him on TV, he'd been playing rugby for like 2 years or something stupid like that.
Was he like late 20s, 30s?
Something like that. I think he got I think at some point, it may have been after he started playing rugby, he was on the Detroit Lions like practice squad or something like that. But ended up being known as the fastest man in sevens. And then Perry Baker, one of his teammates, is just about as fast, and he's fairly well decorated American sevens player as well. Most of the most famous kind of American rugby players are going to be sevens guys because that team's had a lot more success. And a lot of the MLR guys that are more well known are imports. They've had a handful of guys. Kind of like how the MLS used to be kind of where old, Champions League guys used to, spend the last couple of years of their useful playing careers. Maybe they've lost a step, like David Beckham came and, all those guys. MLR has done a little bit of that as well. There's been a couple notable internationals that have signed with MLR teams to kind of stay involved and help grow the game here, and also kind of keep cashing a check for it. So more power to them. Helps the league, helps the name recognition. So
that's good. It shows that even though you guys are from different areas, different countries, it's like a brotherhood.
It is. It very much is. I've got more stories than we have time to recount about just how small the rugby world can be. I was one of the times that they've had a few international games at Soldier Field, and I've been to. I think all of them they've had there since the All Blacks played the Eagles some 8 or 9, maybe 10 years ago. And one of them, I was at a bar and I saw a guy with a Knoxville rugby jacket on, and I was with a couple of my buddies. I played with a guy that played at Knoxville for a couple of years, and then I played with him in Raleigh. And I was like, oh, what the hell? I'll take a shot. And I just like yelled over to him, like, hey, Knoxville. And he looks around. I was like, do you know so and so? And he's like, oh yeah, I knew him for like 10 years. Like we started, shooting the breeze and had some beers over it. And I was like, yeah, it was like a shot in the dark. I just saw his jacket. And I was like, oh, well, maybe he knows him. And he did.
So it's a small community.
It is. It's a small, very entertaining community.
Wow. So I you know what? I have yet to go to a rugby game. I've had plenty. I now gotta go. Obviously we know I was able to meet your good buddy Ethan. Question for the fans. All right. Two things. One, let's say they wanted to attend one of your games. What does that look like? When are you guys in season? And then the second question is, how can they reach you? Social media handles, somewhere up in there.
So I play at the Division II club level. That's what my club, Lincoln Park Rugby, is Division II. We have a Division IV side as well. Apart from that, there's Division I, and then that's kind of that. You get above that, now you're talking like MLR academies and MLR players. I think one or two of the guys from I want to say one of the guys from the Griffins, the Division I club here, just went off to an MLR team. So that's kind of where we are in the hierarchy of rugby, and everything is club level until you get to MLR stuff. So we're paying to play rather than vice versa. It's all for
the love,
for the beatings and the socials. And so the fall season is the one that matters. We'll have a spring season and a fall season. Typically, fall season is going to run from late August through early November-ish. We'll have matches most weekends. And then Midwest playoffs will be kind of right after that season. So that'll be, they change the alignment every year because there's teams that get promoted and relegated and things like that. But, so our conference basically goes all the way from Pittsburgh all the way to like Des Moines and then up to Minnesota. So we do a little bit of travel, but we'll have a good 4 or 5 home games a season here in Chicago, and typically it's just kind of at whatever park or soccer field we can rent out. We have a little harder time with it because we are in the city, so the space can be hard to come by. But we're usually somewhere right along the lake. And
even colder.
Sorry,
I say even colder.
Yeah. Which that's always tough. But yeah, it's just kind of open sidelines. You don't need a ticket. You just rock up to the field, bring a cooler, bring a camp chair, and watch a bunch of grown men
hit each other,
beat the crap out of each other for 80 minutes, and then go drink together. So we didn't have a playoff run this year, but that once you get out of the Midwest, then there'll be kind of nationally organized playoffs that'll be somewhere that's a little nicer of a facility with maybe they're selling tickets there, but you gotta get there. But and then the spring season we just kind of throw together a bunch of friendlies, just play whoever wants to get a game together to help kind of develop the team and keep everyone together, maybe install new offensive schemes or something like that. And also just to keep in shape.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, you need that. That's half the battle at least. It's just being in shape enough to have the 80 minutes not run you dead by the end of it.
So no, rightfully so. And I'm gonna tell you this: I'm gonna be the guy because I went to Chicago. It was cold. Everyone's like, "Why'd you go in cold?" I said I wanted the full Midwest experience.
Well, you got it.
I got it. I got it. Definitely did. So I definitely have to pop up there during the fall and see you guys play and so any social media handles? Are you on Instagram?
Not on Instagram. I'm an old guy. My wife keeps bugging me about it, but not yet. Not on Instagram. My email is just corey.jahner@gmail if they want to reach out directly, or I'm probably findable on Facebook with my actual name. So not to age myself too much, but yeah, I have Facebook, but no Twitter, Instagram.
No, perfectly fine. And he said he was an old guy when he started saying his email. I thought he was gonna say AOL. I was like, oh, this guy.
Oh no, not that old. I'm not retired yet.
Yeah,
I do remember those CDs though. They used to mail you.
Oh yeah. My mom had an AOL account for like 30. I said, Mom, we got Gmail, we got Yahoo. You still got an AOL account, but
yeah.
But no, it was a pleasure having you on. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes. So you see me over here writing. I'm like, dude, so I didn't realize. I'm thinking the sport is a lot more. And I'm sure it's simple once you get to playing it, but I'm like, man, there's a lot of details, right?
Yeah. So once the thing is, you gotta. It helps a lot if you visualize these things. So like concepts like rucks and mauls and scrums and all that.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a friend that knows the game, watch a game with them and like, what is that? What is that? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing about rugby players is more often than not, they're more than happy to talk your ear off about it if anybody wants to learn the game.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see. But it helps to have that kind of the context, and there's a lot of kind of rugby 101 videos on YouTube and stuff like that that'll get you up to kind of a baseline knowledge to be able to watch and enjoy a game. You may not know everything and every little penalty that happens, but
the variables.
You'll know a little bit about what's going on. You'll see a thing happen and know if it's a good thing or not.
Like I'm gonna be at the game, but like I'm gonna talk to experienced fans. That's a scrum.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
They're gonna be like, yeah, yeah. But no, once again, a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Like I said, I'm definitely gonna be up there. I'll probably be there later this year. I gotta pop back up and just show some love to my Midwesterners. But yeah, man, we're definitely gonna have to wrap some more. Maybe come there, grab a beer, and then who knows? Maybe I'll let you guys beat me up a little bit. I'll get on the field with you guys. Who knows?
Absolutely. Hey, practice every Tuesday and Thursday. Come on down. We'll teach you the game from the inside.
Okay. Well, most definitely, Corey. It was a pleasure, and I'll talk to you soon.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you soon.